We have here today with us a very interesting artist and very important one, Lesia Khomenko from Ukraine. So Lesia, welcome, first of all.
Hello.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I was born and lived in Kiev, in Ukraine. Kiev is a capital city. And I started my artistic practice in 2004, in the middle of 2000s. And it was a very specific time in Ukraine, like as a post-Soviet country, because it was quite poor with art institution, arts scene. It was really, really small. A lot of interesting artists from elder generation, but
there weren't any young ones.
Yeah, it was lack of young artists because it was no any condition, for appearance for young generation, because educational system was very, very old-fashioned. It was like it was based on 19th century school with plenty studios for classic paintings, drawings, and sculpture, and nothing in common with contemporary art. Course of art history finished at the beginning of 20th century, so they really cancel and tried to avoid the idea of contemporary world, not even art. I have to say that of course it based on it was based a little bit on corruption, because all professors were keep each other, and it was like circle. And most of my generations, we finished such kind of academies, and then we found we start work together as a group, as community, because it was only way to to create own context, own practice. I was painter from very beginning. Ukraine is very, very based on painting school. Of course, a lot of younger artists try to leave this painting tradition. But for me, it was very interesting how I could be critical artist, political artist with this tool of painting. But at the same time, I was working with artistic group of 6 artists, rep group, REP.
Yes.
It's in Ukraine, and we did a lot of different things. We did public performances, big installations, videos. We were trying to make, first of all, institution critique, to criticize state policy or state culture policy. From another hand, we produced the statements that, we are a young generation. And third point, it's one of the most important, that we started during the Orange Revolution. It was a big protest movement in 2004-2005, connected to election of one of the presidents. It was a big falsification, and people just went on the Maidan, on the main street, and did a protest over a few months in winter time in 2004-2005. It was our first experience of public protests in Ukraine. We were like 23, 24, 25 at the time. And we were very interested because all of people were expressing themselves directly on the street with banners, with singing. It was very festival look like kind of protest, a lot of music, a lot of positive. Got the idea that art could be look like this, like protest, like big happening on the street, and we appropriate this language of public protest as artistic practice. That's why we did a lot of performances, different looks like protest action, but I can't identify myself only as a painter, because I did a lot of things. And it's very very explain about condition of artists in Ukraine, because we have now really a big amount of very good artists, very strong, but the situation with institutions is still quite weak. Really, it became much more better over like past 10 years, but it's still not enough. And that's why all artists always involved in different initiatives which goes beyond art practice, like developed education, alternative art education in Ukraine in private school. It was full-time program, and I worked on it for 6 years. It was really very interesting experiments, and with this my educational practice, I was helped younger artists to. Because our academy, it still exists, it's still very old, and 20 years old guys really get crazy of it, even more than us. They fight with this academy all the time, try to change something, but it's very difficult. So to create the alternative education was a very good idea, and I create some circle for young artists. Now it's not very visible because war started and most of artists really fled Ukraine, and our individual practices now it's most visible. But all these initiatives which we did in Ukraine, I hope it will be after ending of the war, when we will come back and rebuild, country. So I'm a painter, but I did a lot of things all my life, and also I was living in Kiev, mostly because for me to work with local context was very, very important. Ukraine is a very interesting place because once you invent something, just got some idea, you even if you're very young, to organize your artistic run space, your festival, everything. It's a very potential place, and that's why I was a little bit addicted, to live in Kiev. Now I'm totally cut out of my hometown, of my country. Of course, I'm in touch with people, but I decided to evacuate my family until end of the war, and I wanted to come to USA even before war, because here, the place where is booming of the paintings.
To ask you also that, okay, we have all heard about the situation in your country, of course. Has actually art helped you deal with the situation and find your hope again? Because it's a very hard thing for everyone.
Yes, thank you. It's a very good question, and it's a very important question. I was working with the topic of the war before February 24th, because the war, as you know, in Ukraine starts in 2014. Yeah. But I started even to construct narratives, to include like personal story in it. And of course, I was interested in deconstruct this visual narrations with Soviet paintings. So I was working with this a lot, because I was completely sure that it's very important to rethink our official history, because it's full of manipulations. All 20th century for Ukraine is very controversial things. Like every decade, officials claim opposite things. And of course, it's a very important point for decolonization of Ukraine. That's why this attention to history is very important. Also, before full-scale invasion, for me, it was very important that it's very difficult to speak about the war with people who don't know what is war, because Ukrainian war at the time was not very popular. But people get tired out of it. 8 years, nothing happened. Very, very strong battles or something. Yes. Yeah, but it was very, very big informational cyber war. This term in cyber war, the informational war, which is actual for people everywhere, all around the world. I think this cyber war is very total things. That's why I was thinking how art could compete with this propaganda machine of internet, for example. And I was trying to build all my works and exhibitions in this to compare propaganda tools and propaganda methods with art methods. For example, I created my solo shows like quests, whereas nothing is clear. Okay, it's painting, it's some installation, some space, but what's the topic, what is artist about, and so on. I wanted to make this unclear situation with a lot of different points that public visitor should collect it and assemble by himself or herself.
Yeah.
And I thought that it's one of the mission of the artists, because artists with their complicated works, which based on different paradoxes in one, they could train the consciousness and brain of people, to keep a lot of controversial things in one, in one attention, point. So it was my strategy. And here I came back to your question, because we ran from Kiev next day of when war started with my family on my car, West Ukraine, not abroad in the beginning. And everyone was volunteering there. I was trying to also join this volunteer movement to do something, because it was important to help. But it was very full of people. So I found a few very good independent art institutions, very small, but very promising, very good one. And I proposed them to make the art residency for displaced artists like me, artists who just run, because I had a feeling that I lost everything. So I had two feelings when in the first days of the war. First, is that I'm not human in in a full sense. I just small little rabbit who ran out of shooting. It's very terrible feeling, very cringe, that I feel really I should run. Air sirens were every night, every day. We should go to the basement, So I can't operate my time and my life. I should hide all the time, and it was very bad feeling. And I believe that only art practice helped me to go out of this feeling, and to think about it, about all war and what happened from the distance and from a cool mind. I mean, so I believe that art practice will help very on personal level, very much to start to work. So when I decided to make this art residency, one, it's to help artists to to escape from this victim mode, and to show maybe on their example to others that it's possible. But I mean, it was not like condition of all society. Of course, people were struggling, were resist. Everyone, even kids, they were volunteering. They unite very much. But other thing what I wanted to show and to enforce that there is still art is doing in Ukraine, because I strongly believe that the country, it keeps country shape or country mode when it's culture in it. If it's no culture, so it's like desert, it's just territory. It's my opinion. And of course, all museums, all institutions were closed on the first weeks of the war. Most of them were volunteering, were functioning as a hub, volunteer hub for people, for some resources and so on. And this very small institution also, they were volunteering all the time. They collected some equipment, some things, and sent it to the army. And also they evacuated artworks from the hottest spots in Ukraine. The second feeling what I had when I just fled, because I'm a painter who make huge, big scale paintings, and I left everything in Kiev, and I had a feeling that my biography, cut it from me. So if something will happen with this, I had two storage with my paintings, and I thought, okay, if something happen, I will, like, all my biography will disappear. I will not have any proof of that I was doing something for past 15 years. So I felt a huge fragility of my existence as an artist, and then I decided that I should fast and immediately start to work. Just to have in the front of my eyes some works that they prove that I have a practice. It was very naive, but it was, it was intuition. I found that this opinion about the war completely changed in 1 second. And all things which I did before, it was very naive for me, And I invited a lot of, so we found this small working residency, small studio, and I invited some artists who I could collect around the city, to someone from different cities, bought a lot of artistic supplies, organized, safe. It was a really safe place. I mean, psychologically, it was very safe, it was very quiet. No one, people were not able to work. They were so frustrated, and step by step we started to discuss, started to work, started to do something. And we thought at the beginning, that it will last for 2 weeks. At least the residency functioned for 3 months. And then we did about 5 exhibitions around Europe with this group of artists. And it was a success because I connected, for example, Kyiv people with Ivano-Frankivsk community. I did a lot of contacts. So it means that I built a system, between artists and institutions, that people get know each other. And also it was very important that some art projects are still running. And it was very, very big doubts on the beginning if it's important to continue with art. It's this informational war, it's to make artists visible. And art process is very important, and to illuminate artistic voices and so on and so on.
So I think that after all that, I think that the artists around the world are really united now. Their support, not only to you as a person, but to your country in general. So I think that's very important, and it's proof that art really unites us all, no matter where we live, who we are. So I would like to ask you now, I think that art, not only in your country, but in general in the world, has an important position in society. I mean, I'm talking about the young generations, mostly. I mean, do they really care about art? Are they really creative? Do they really understand the importance of art?
Yes, I believe that art is extremely important discipline. Because art itself is a multidisciplinary phenomenon. From one side, it's very important for other spheres, professional spheres. So, for example, science or movie or cinema or, photography. They have very straight frames of each, they formatted, cinema should be cinema. Yeah, we have production, post-production, and we have movie run in cinema. Yeah, but in art, you could do multi-channel video installation, for example, or mix everything with text, with sculpture, and so on. So, I mean, it's one thing that art, it's a place for experiments for other disciplines. And art itself is very important because it produces imaginary for society. So artists make some influence, infection even with imaginary, and this very slowly grew in global consciousness and really changed society. So artistic influence, it's never fast. It's never like this, some innovative idea in art in 1 or 2 years change the world. But in 10 years, 5-10 years, it's very visible how art makes influence on the changes of society. That's why I think that art should be not only art for everyone, or everyone make art, or art as an activism. Because it could be activist on it could be both activist and some laboratory works with very complicated structure works. I mean, it should be very different. It should be very sophisticated, and it should be very popular in the same time. It's different tasks for art. I mean, because we have really a lot of discussions and had for many years in Ukraine. Should art be clear for everyone, or should it be just for professionals, for example? Yeah. So I think it should be both in the same time. It's like math. We have theory or physics, for example. We have theory physics and we have physics like electricity and so on. Yeah, for younger generation, of course, it's very important. I think only challenge for them because art system became more and more global. Like if you think about art in the middle of 20th century, it was very romantic. Yeah, like just not few, but few circles of artists, few institutions, and they felt themselves very free. Yeah, they could invent something. Yeah, now it's big metropolis like New York. It's like 300,000 artists in one place. I think it's challenging a lot. Because I was working with very, very young artists in Kiev as a students. I noticed a big problem because this generation is very fragile. They're very serious. They doubt all the time. They're afraid to make wrong step, wrong attempt, wrong experiment. They want to be, excellent. Especially because elder generation as us, we were not care about them. I think it's a huge pressure on them now, and I am sure that it's maybe new technologies and cyber war also has a huge influence. Because it's not generation, from my experience, not generation, with connected with some special drugs or things. I think our generation is more like rock and roll, techno clubs and so on. This generation is more healthy, but this digital influence, I think it's very strong.
I think that no one can deny that technology has made everything more accessible, and art is one of them, of course. Everyone now can just see the works of his favorite or her favorite artists, which is really very important, and it helps in the evolution of art. Since there are a lot of art movements, from romanticism that you mentioned also to pop art, for example. I mean, which art movement inspires you the most?
I'm not sure if that art movement has has special title. I think it's like Eastern Bloc. Like I am from Eastern Bloc. It means that it's not only Ukraine. It means post-social countries who are. I think it's when you meet like artists from Estonia, from Baltic countries, from Poland. You meet the similar approaches. Yeah, people are working with historical narrations, with personal archive, with public archives, for example, with some footage from the past and rethink this past. And I think it's quite, if we could say about it, it's a quite a phenomena of this, and it's how my colleague said it, historiographical turn or historic turn. Like turn to rethink our past. Maybe it could be title of the movement. It's his own, definition, because it's not only painting. It's more about installations, for example. But it's of course institutional based art. It's not the movement which goes beyond institution on the street thousand, but it was another phenomenon.
There is a constant evolution in art. It changes all the time with new people, new artists. You as an artist, have you always wanted to be one? I mean, was that your dream from your childhood?
I was grown up in family of artists, and I was drawing from childhood. So actually, I don't have something special story. I just knew that I will be artist, not because it's a willing of my parents, no, because it was for me very curious from very beginning to be artist. Yeah. So because I also was thinking about what's the future of art. For me, it's very difficult. Of course, now we have a big tendency in the world that it's other countries which were not included in this modernistic project now included. Yeah. And it brings, of course, it brings completely new aesthetic. Some of countries and continents developed in 20th century, like parallel, some experiments and some contemporary art. Some of countries just now started, to follow all these, modernistic steps. It's connected with the local traditions, of course, always, and it brings a really new aesthetic full of craft materials, like, a lot of ceramics, a lot of textile works now, a lot of the so-called the skilled art. It could be, sterilization or something. It's a huge tendency now. It's a little bit different than what I'm doing, because I really skilled in one tradition, in figurative painting tradition, but skilled. And I'm opposite. I'm trying to deconstruct these skills all my life, all my practice. So it's very interesting to compare where's the place of, for example, for Eastern Europe, in the world, how it could have influence or share experience and so on. So let's see. Maybe we will invent some new phenomenon.
I mean, art is an experiment. And it never ends, and that's what's beautiful about it. It gives you the freedom to just explore a lot of cultures, lots of different societies. So we could say that art is something that unites all the world.
Of course, art unites. It's universalism. And I feel very comfortable in art system. Whenever I travel, when I visit in museums, I feel like at home. I don't know.
This is your world, yes.
Relax, all the time.
In conclusion, do you think that art, no matter the form, can change society and help us make a difference? And if yes, I mean, how exactly?
Yeah, as I told, I think that art has influence on our imaginary, but of course, I think is very important. Education is very important. Without proper education, art will never have influence on society. It's like study foreign language, for example. You can't understand what people talk about if you don't understand. That's why education, I think it's a crucial thing in the world. I think not college education, but school education in art. So I think if we would have art history classes in school everywhere, even not practice, but art history, because it's like grammar to understand what art is about, I think it would have more strong influence on society, because otherwise art is like a quest for everyone, to enter to this system. It's a big challenge, and art looks like disgusting from beginning, not beautiful and so on, brutal. So people should have some experience with art, and they start to trust art, and the moment when people trust art will change the imaginary, if society not so developed with institutions and people in general don't have any idea what contemporary art is about, right? On post-Soviet countries, for example. So art make influence more slowly and through agents, people who are mediators from artists to society, like curators or maybe some journalists or art writers, or I don't know. But we should remember that art belongs to culture system. It's different systems, but they make statements, and it has huge influence on young generation.
So in conclusion, I think that every form of art actually creates a change, as long as there are people out there who support it and who really want, let's say, to create a better future for everyone. And art is a way to do that.
I personally, I don't believe that art system is democratic one, art system. Of course, it's based, like all 20th century, as we know, were a lot of attempts to make it democratic, started from Beuys, Joseph Beuys, through different artists who tried to, this Nicolas Bourriaud, this aesthetic of social relationships with artists involved, just people from the neighborhood to be co-creators and so on. But the problem is that at least only those artists are visible in those projects. Even Beuys, yeah, we know Beuys, but we don't know other hundreds of people who were around him and who were the equal artists. Art based on expertise, professional expertise. Everything has chose. It's very tricky system, I guess. Very tricky and complicated. It's of course more democratic than science, for example, like math. I don't know, much more democratic. Any academical subject, I think. Art is more open. You could not to have high like degree. I mean, like you could be self-educated, for example, for art and that success and so on. But once we discussed this, and one artist, Oleg Mavromaty, he said very interesting thing, because Oleg Mavromaty is I guess it's a Russian artist who fled Russia because he was supposed to get to prison because of his work. He does very provocative performances, indeed, and now he lives in the USA, I guess. And one Ukrainian artist asked him, why you show your works on festivals and exhibitions, and why those bloggers can't do the same, because it's their piece, it's their footage. And he said that because it's very difficult to be an artist. It's not for everyone, not because it's a privilege. It's because it's very scary, because it's shame, you could do something funny and everyone would laugh of you. And for people, it's scare. It's very difficult to trust yourself, to represent a weird thing. And also he said that it's sometimes you could get 15 minutes success, for example, and is representing something, but next day you should wake up and be artist again. So you should be artist always, every day, and it's very difficult for people. And I agree that being an artist, it's a huge challenge. It's psychologically very difficult, because success not every day. Sometimes most of time for artists, it's a huge painful doubts and struggling.
You have to deal with failure.
Yeah, that's accepted things now, especially because of social media, because of blogs, because of you could make creativity and show it online, for example.
I think I agree with you, of course. And I think that's why there is also a lot of competition. Um, I mean, there are so many artists out there from all around the world with works that are really amazing and they have a deep meaning. So just finding your place and finding your identity as an artist, I think, is the most difficult part. And that's why I really admire artists in general. I'm really happy about the fact that there are artists like you that that belong to the younger generations, and they love art so much that I think they couldn't live without it. And I think these are the people who really um, change society and really fight for what is right.
Yeah, I'm agree with you.
Thank you so much.